Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Steve.
Welcome to the Forks Drum Closet podcast. We're in episode 8 this evening. You can check out all of our podcast episodes on our YouTube channel, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Instagram. Hi, Steve. Good to see you.
Hey, man. Good to have you guys here. Absolutely.
Dude, thank you for being here. How's your weekend starting off?
It's good, man. This is great fun. We got stuff planned for tomorrow, and then just kick back and relax on Sunday. Beautiful weather, and we're all happy.
What's on the docket for tomorrow? Big stuff. You guys are open tomorrow in here.
Yeah, we only do Saturdays to the public. You know, we do 11 to 5 on Saturdays. Okay. The rest of the time it's online.
Sure.
But we got some guys coming in. I picked up some stuff today, and the guy's got another thing he's going to bring me tomorrow. We'll get a couple other friends coming in with some stuff. So It'll be a fun day. It's kind of our hang day. You know, we just, the rest of the week we work, and then Saturday we kind of devote it to, we're here, customers come on in, kick back, hang a little bit, and it's kind of that kind of vibe for tomorrow. I
mean, you guys are moving and shaking as far as I know, because, I mean, just like you described with everything, but then also you had us bring several things up here for a few customers. So you guys are moving drums across state lines for sure.
Yeah, it's been good. You know, I mean, despite all the craziness with the COVID stuff, part of the advantage here is we're 95% online with what we do. So, you know, that hasn't been impacted as much. And, you know, we find people, they're always looking for cool stuff. And if we got a cool vintage kit or a snare, you know, special cymbals or things like that, and we move the stuff. So it's been okay.
It seems like you guys have, very much from an outsider's perspective, it seems like you guys have a very cool apparatus here to take advantage of what you were just saying in terms of your online clientele and using all of that time really efficiently to get great product and great examples of that product out there for people. So do you find that you everything you really need to take advantage of the new world in terms of drum retail, do you have access to it in this building?
Yeah, and you know, it's a funny thing because you could say I want to take credit for being a genius and figuring all that out, but that's not how it works. You know, the reality is we set this up, we do it the way we do it, and it just turns out that it happens to be a really, really good fit for where we are right now in the world with this situation. And so we're thankful for that, you know, but I don't take any credit for being the genius behind it. It just happened to work out well.
Well, you're certainly the patriarch. I mean, your son, Stephen, who handles a lot of this very expertly, I would imagine, and your wife, Debbie, are both here tonight. So it's very cool that the Maxwell family gets to hopefully partake in that. That's great.
Everybody does. And Chris, you know, our son Chris, he runs all the back end of the shop here. So he's got all the shipping, takes care of all that, which is huge, manages our reproduction parts business also. And, you know, Stephen basically runs the recording studio. We've got a full recording studio here that we use for our own stuff. And sometimes we rent it out. And we got another guy works here. You haven't met yet, but Noah, he's a great guy. Right. And he comes in and he's the guy who loves to get an old vintage kit in, and he'll spend time cleaning it up. It'll look like it just came out of the showroom, you know, so he loves doing that.
Probably a fun, I wouldn't say chore, but probably a fun almost hobby probably while he's getting to clean those up and see them come back to life.
Oh, yeah. He just loves it. He's done a couple of videos of things and put it up and did fast, you know, speeded up motion on a snare drum. Took it from garbage dirty to looking like it just left the factory, and
that's cool.
He does a great job.
Talked to Noah, I think on the phone a few times. Haven't had the pleasure to meet your son Chris or Noah yet, so hopefully that'll change.
Yeah, they'll be in. Yeah, you'll see them tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I mean Marshall and I are turning and burning. We're getting stuff and we're getting out of here, and we'll be back in Nashville tomorrow. So it'll be a wild 48 hours by tomorrow night for sure.
Yeah.
So we have a couple questions to get into. Okay. A lot of myself included in the drum world, I think, but also the Nashville drum world. Because obviously with COVID going on, we haven't had the luxury of seeing you since February.
I know, it's been a drag. I've been wanting to come down.
Because I mean, you're super proactive in terms of you come down. You were coming down like last year. You were down once, even twice a month sometimes.
Yeah, usually a couple. Yeah, every other week kind of thing.
Totally. So, you know, the fact that we haven't seen you since February was almost, you know, Marshall and I were saying, oh my gosh, could it have been 10 months? It can't have been. So the fact that when you reminded us you were in February, it was like, okay, well, that was before the new world started. So that is wild. But to get into it, like, I guess, refamiliarize us all here. I know who you are because you're my employer, which I am very grateful for, of course. But who is Steve Maxwell, the drum retailer and drummer? What I mean is, I know very little about your retail and drumming background, only the conversations we've had. So, you know, the guy who founded, a good friend of yours, Gary Forkham, who started Forks Drum Closet in 1981, I definitely know where the closet started. But where did Steve Maxwell's closet start and when? Because I know you come from a different background. You're a player, amazing player, of course. But like one morning, where were you in your life? What were you doing when you decided, I'm a drummer, I think I need to have a drum store? When was this?
Okay. Yeah, that's a fun question. Okay, so I was working in the, I worked in the credit card business, even though I've been a player for 50 some years.
Yes.
I've lost track.
Which you're only 37 years old, so I don't know how you pulled that off.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Okay.
If only. But it was, at one point I was in that and I said, I really, really like to do more. But I don't know if I should commit to doing anything because I didn't really want to set up anything big. So I found a little space in a place called the Fine Arts Building in Chicago. It's a building that's host to youth orchestras and things like that. And our boys were in the youth orchestra there. And I said, this is kind of a cool place. So when I found a little tiny 500 square foot space in that building, and I said, I wonder what I could do. And I said, well, you could rent it for 1 year. So you could do a 1 year lease. And it was $1,000 a month. I said, okay, I'll roll it. I'll roll for, $1,000 a month, 12 grand a year. I'll roll with it. And I just brought some stuff in and I did it on the side. I only did it on Sundays. And it was good. But I'd contact some people and they'd come in because I had vintage stuff. And I was a big vintage fan. So I had all that kind of stuff in there. Mm-hmm. And it started to kind of grow from there. And so then we opened up a little bit bigger space in that same building. And it was working out okay. So I ended up hiring somebody to work there because I was still in the other business, the credit card business.
Right.
And back when I turned 55, in the credit card business, I finally said, well, I've been doing that a long time. And I think I don't want to do that anymore. I'd like to do this. And that was when we opened up the store in New York.
Yes.
So that was...
shout out Jess Birch. What up?
Yeah, that's right. Jess Birch, who manages that shop for us. So we opened up the New York store, and it's just a kind of a passion. And for me, in Chicago, the great drum shop it wasn't a GC or a Sam Ash. I mean, back when I was young, it was basically Maury LaShawn at Frank's Drum Shop.
Yeah.
So that was his history. That's what I grew up with. And in New York City, it was Frank Ippolito's Pro Percussion. Places like that were historic. And so to me, my idea was if we could kind of pay tribute to those places, those guys, that would be kind of cool. So that's what we did. That's the intent was in Chicago. And that's what the intent was in New York. And it just kind of has grown from there. Mm-hmm. And, when that was about when I was 55 when we did the New York shop.
Expansion.
Expansion. And it just kind of went from there. And, right around, you start looking at timing, and it works out okay when Chris, our boys, Stephen and Chris, when they were out of high school, into college, then, Deb had time. So Deb would start working with me in the business and doing stuff on the back end so we could grow it there. And then, as things progressed, the kids came in to work with us. Stephen and Chris came in to work with us. And things kind of, grew from there. So for me, it's something that I've loved. Since I used to come to New York City, I used to go to Frank Ippolito's, and I studied with Papa Joe Jones and all the people that were there, the jazz players. Mel Lewis was in town, Elvin was there. All those guys, that's where they lived. That's where they played. That's where they lived. So it's so cool to be there and to kind of bring that, to carry that forward, carry that legacy forward through our shop in New York was meaningful to me. And the same thing for Frank's Drum Shop here in Chicago. To carry that forward was meaningful.
Yeah.
And you start looking at it and layering it in, and then I got involved with Craviato.
Right.
Of course. And then, myself and the other business partner, Elizabeth Cabraser. And Elizabeth is a business partner with us in the shops as well. So it's one big happy family.
Yeah.
But then we also, when Gary decided he was going to sell the land and it was time to kind of move on in his way, then to me it was kind of the same thing. It was like, well, you can't just not have Forks Drum Closet. It can't. That's not an option. It's just not an option.
I know we all grew up thinking that for sure. So it's awesome that it got to continue the way that it did.
So for us, that's kind of how I look at it, and we get a lot of joy from that. So we get to kind of continue those legacies. Forks Drum Closet. Somebody said, "Well, you're going to change the name?" And I said, "Why? Why would I change the name? This is what Gary created. It's been known for 32 years as Forks Drum Closet. That's what the history is. That's where the legacy is. We just want to keep it moving forward, just like it was." Mm-hmm. So, for me, it's a great pleasure. It's a passion. I have a passion for it. I'm very thankful and blessed because Deb and the kids are in it with us, so we're all in it together. And then there's some days when we, like everybody, we all wake up and go, "What am I doing this for?"
Oh, because it's fun. Yeah.
But
did you start with your in the small space when you first got going, even before you moved to the New York store, started the New York store? Did you start with your own stuff, like as your own inventory, or did you have kind of background from drumming friends in the industry that to sort of get like where did your first inventory come from?
That stuff came from my own collection because
Right.
I started getting into vintage when I was very young. When I was probably 18, I started getting into vintage. So when I opened that shop, I had my own collection was the vintage stuff that we sold.
Got it.
And we didn't really know what to do next. A friend of mine was the principal percussionist in the Cincinnati Symphony, Bill Platt, still a great friend of mine. And Bill said, "Hey, we're going to Zildjian in a couple of weeks to pick out some cymbals for the orchestra." He said, "Why don't you come?" I said, "Oh man, they won't. What do they want to talk? They don't want to talk to me. They don't want me to sell their cymbals. I'm just some little dinky guy in the corner over here." But they were very cool, and they were very receptive. And I went down to Zildjian, and they let me pick the cymbals through in the factory. It was great fun, and I was just like beside myself because I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. We bought 20 cymbals. Mm-hmm. Now you and I both know it's like 20 cymbals today. It's like big deal, but that was a big deal.
Sure,
back then.
Well, of course it was.
It was a big deal.
Yeah,
but they were really gracious, great people, and
this was the first version of your store.
Yes, the very first version of the store, the little tiny space.
Okay.
So, but it was important, and I remember that stuff. And those relationships are really, really important to keep.
That's important. When you just a minute ago, you were saying all the cool stuff about being in New York and getting to experience on a ground level, all those amazing players that you got to study with and things. You said that was when you were around 18 or 19?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, 18, 19, right around there.
So who a young 18, 19-year-old go get the world Steve Maxwell, who's that guy playing with? Who were you just obsessed with vintage gear and the old drummers, or were you gigging underground in New York all the time? Who was that guy?
I wasn't gigging in New York. I lived in Rhode Island, and I used to go to New York. I used to take the bus into New York and stay there at the cheap President Hotel, which was really a cheap flea bag hotel in 1973.
Yeah.
But it's still there now, and it's actually a nice hotel now. But I would go there, have lessons, and hang around. And just hang at the clubs, go to the clubs, see people playing. I was playing back in Rhode Island quite a bit because I started gigging when I was about 12. Yeah. But I gig with everything from really young wedding guys doing wedding bands, everything like that. And then I went on the road with a show band right around 74. And that's when you do show bands used to go do hotel circuits. So you'd stay at the Marriotts or the Sheratons or whatever it is, and you go to the lounge and there'd be real band in there, and they're doing 3 shows a night. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of that. I did a lot of jazz band in high school, and I was primarily a jazz player.
Right.
But that's the stuff I was doing, and didn't do any gigging in New York. It was all back on the East Coast, and then traveling with the band.
So that's a show band. That was all. That's all standards and things, right?
Yeah, we would do. Think about the time. We're talking 1974. So we'd be doing. We do a dance set, and then we come out and we do a show set, which would be just different tunes. Top 40 oriented stuff.
Okay.
Top 40 oriented stuff.
Gotcha.
But it was great, and we made the rounds, played hotel circuits. It was great fun.
That's so cool. I bet it was. Because you swing so well when you play. We've a lot of us have heard your videos and things, so it's cool to hear. Obviously, you're a great jazz drummer, but to hear that you were doing some standard stuff and the old working schlep stuff is how we all cut our teeth, right?
No kidding.
When you're growing up, so you said you started playing gigs and things like that when you were 12. So when did the lightning bolt strike? I think most of us will probably remember who it was that you just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Like what age was that, Steve Maxwell, when it was like, okay, I think these are nice?
Yeah. I was probably around 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And my parents had some records, and there was Gene Krupa records.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think about my age, So I was born in 52. So 9 years old. So it's not even the 60s yet. And they had these records from the Benny Goodman Orchestra with Gene Krupa, and I remember listening to Krupa and thinking how cool that was. And so what I used to do was I used to try to play. So what I would do is I would take an old Maxwell House coffee tin with the plastic top and a Quaker oatmeal oatmeal thing with the box and make a bongo out of that. Take a couple of coffee things and screw them together, and make fake drums on them. And that's what I started doing. I started playing and stuff like that. And my mother's mom, my grandmother on my mother's side, said to my mother one day, "If you don't buy him a drum set, I'm going to buy him one." So I had this. That was, I think I was like 11.
Yeah.
Like that.
Okay. So then 1 year later, you were ripping into the scene already.
It wasn't. I was playing. I could play. I was a competent player. So I got a call one day from somebody who said, "Hey, I hadn't played a gig before." He said, "This guy wants to hire you, and he's with the Continental Orchestra." I said, "Oh, sounds great. Sounds great."
Yeah, big.
So I don't know. I had played like in high school, high school stuff, knocking around with the kids, but this is like real gigs. So it turns out that it's in Rhode Island's a very heavy Portuguese population. So this were the guys who played at Portuguese weddings. So it was a Portuguese wedding band. And it turns out to be, I laugh about it now because the oldest guy in the band then was probably my age now, but he was like, I'm looking at this real old guy. There was a guy playing violin, one guy playing a mandolin who was so hard of hearing he had to tip his head down like this every time he played the mandolin.
Amazing. A
guy playing the guitar who was probably 19, and then me at 12 years old. But I was like, hey, this is great. Yeah. I'm getting money. Yeah. I'm getting, this is great. So then that was like the first real gigs.
Yeah.
But we all start with stuff like that.
Yeah, but you were getting paid before most of us have even picked up a drumstick playing. So that's good news.
It was funny. It was fun.
I wouldn't be doing my job if you said Maxwell House Coffee a second ago. Is your last name actually Maxwell, or did you just lift the name from the coffee cup coffee can that you started playing from?
That is my actual real name.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And no relation to the coffee company, because
magnets.
Otherwise, I'd have 40 drum shops all across the country.
Just asking. So a minute ago, because you've got a great legacy and quickly with all of this stuff. When we walked in, I was blown away by the first Craviotto drum set. Oh. Incredible! Not only is it an amazing instrument, but it's also I'm a huge comic book collector myself. So the Holy Grails would be like Detective Comics 27, which is the first appearance of Batman, or 1938 Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman, the modern superhero.
Yep.
So the fact that #1 of the Craviotto drum set is sitting over there, kind of resonates on that whole collector thing. Like that's issue #1 right there. Yeah. So getting into that, you obviously have a very special, being the owner of Craviotto, not only that, but then your history with Johnny is very deep. And I know you guys were friends. How did that start? Did you guys just meet at a gig somewhere? Did you just love his drums a whole lot, or where did that come from?
Man, that's a really great question. I couldn't have staged questions better than this because it's a great topic. Johnny was starting to make the Timeless Timber snare drums, which is the lumber that was taken out of Lake Superior.
Yes, and for Drum Workshop.
Well, this
is before.
This is actually a little bit before.
Okay.
He had that, and he did these. These are 600-year-old bird's eye maple. The wood is unbelievable. And then he did start to do the DW, the Craviotto DW Timeless Timber. But before that, I saw him. He had been out at a Chicago vintage drum show, Chicago Drum Show, and he had a 4x14 that he had made. Craviotto Lake Superior Timeless Timber 4x14 bird's eye that he made as a giveaway item for the show.
Wow.
And I remember looking at it, and at that time he was just starting to do the ones for DW. Those were 5.5x14. And I remember looking at the drum and thinking, oh man, it's so beautiful. And I love 4x14s. I just love them. And I went up and just talked to Johnny, and I just to say hi. And he was such a gracious guy, and he was really interested that I was interested in his drum. And so he was just a really warm and good guy, and I remembered that. So maybe it's like a month later, I kind of called him up after the show, and I said, Johnny, I know you're doing these with DW, the 5.5x14s, but would you maybe, if I ordered some 4x14s, would you make them for me? And he said, sure, no problem. So that was the first thing I did with him, and we did a run of 4x14, Timeless Timber, bird's eye maple, snare drums with the 24 karat gold hardware and the engraved rims by John Aldridge. And I've still got 3 of those 4x14s in my private collection here. But that's how that relationship started.
I see.
And over the years, I loved what Johnny did with his snare drums. And one time I was out in California, and I said to Johnny, man, wouldn't it be so cool if you could do drum sets? This was way before he had done any sets. And he said, I know. He said, I got to figure it out. And when he left the relationship that he had with DW, where he was making the shells for the DW.
Like late 90s?
Yeah. And he then was doing some stuff on his own, and he wanted to do more and wanted to do the sets. And that's right around, 2004, where he and then Elizabeth Cabraser, our partner, got involved in helping him get established on his own. And then right around 2006 was when the first kits appeared. So that kit number 1 is from that time. My personal kit was number 2, which is up here as well. There is another kit. Johnny built a kit for himself that was kind of like a midnight blue gloss lacquer. So sometimes you see pictures of him with that kit.
Yes.
But the one I have here is actually the serial number inside is 001, and my personal one up there is 002.
So get better than that.
I didn't own 001. Actually, another person that that worked with Johnny, really, really nice guy, had bought that kit and owned it since new. And several years ago, he just decided he wanted to move it, and he called me and I bought it in 2 seconds.
Sure.
And that kit is still sitting there with the hang tags on it. It hasn't ever been played.
It's gorgeous.
One of these days, I want to take it out and play it, but I just can't bring myself to do it yet.
Well, listen, if I had a copy of Detective Comics number 27, I probably wouldn't read it. You know what I mean? I'd be very nervous to even open the thing. You know what I mean? So I totally get that. Bringing on folks like an amazing drum designer who a lot of folks know, Sam Bacco, who is now involved with you guys at Craviotto. Us at Forks Drum Closet have had a distinct privilege to sort of see a great forward leap this past year with Craviotto, not only in terms of just the production times, but also really carrying on the heritage that you're so passionate about in terms of not only the brand Craviotto, but also, like you've described, different drum stores that you grew up with and things like that. It's an amazing drum company. It has been since day one with the 4x14s and things. Now that you have got really some serious strides going right now, what's the goal? Where does Craviotto go from here? Because there's no drums like them for sure out there.
That's true, and I take no credit for any of that because that was all what Johnny created.
Yeah.
And one of the hardest things, I can answer your question by backing into it a little bit. One of the hardest things to do was to figure out what we were going to do when Johnny passed. Because his health had been not so good, but not so bad that we thought there was an issue there. And he didn't really tell us that he had issues. So he passed, and it was sudden. And as much as I am passionate about the brand and can help on the business side, and that Elizabeth, our partner, is passionate about it and could help financially as well, we don't build the drums. We don't build the drums. We don't know. I can't build the drums. And you can't just go find somebody hanging around that can build that. There has to be a deep understanding of what's necessary to make a solid shell drum as opposed to a plywood drum. And not that the plywood drums are great, but this is a whole different animal.
Very different.
It's very different. So you've got to have that understanding of what to do and how to do it and why. And there are very few people that can do that. So for us, it was a very difficult period of time trying to figure out what do we do next. Johnny, thankfully, transferred his skills down to his team, so the team could do some of that work, but you also need on-site a leader. There has to be a leader on site. And that was 2,000 miles away. I'm here in Chicago, and that's 2,000 miles away in California.
Yeah.
So we were fortunate enough to work this out where when we purchased Forks, the purchase of Forks led us to, actually, I knew of Sam's reputation already, but it led us to have conversations with Sam. And it's one of those things, sometimes the stars line up just right, Sam had been doing what he'd been doing for a long time with the orchestra and very successful at it and other things. But he had always kind of wanted to, again, put an imprint on a brand. Like he did when he was doing work for Slingerland, and he did great work with them back in that era. Tremendous.
Those are some of the best drums in the world.
Bingo.
The 90s Slingerland Studio Kings.
Bingo. Mm-hmm. And, that was still under Gibson ownership, and then so there's some little things there that make it tricky. But Sam's skill and his knowledge, the thing about Sam is he's got knowledge of the wood and the properties of wood and what needs to happen, whether it's solid or plywood, and he understands production to the nth degree.
Yes.
It's like Rain Man. I mean, he's like, well, this and this and this and this, and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about, but go ahead and do it. He understands everything, and he's committed to carrying Johnny's legacy forward. So then for us, Elizabeth and I said, well, this is the person that can run the business, but the business is in California. Mm. And, doing business in California is a pain to begin with, but it made sense to try to consolidate it. So we were fortunate enough to find space. As you know, the space we found about less than a mile from Forks, that's large enough for us to put the entire Craviotto operation in, plus the annex for Forks, with a lot of extra space. And we made that move in July of last year.
Right.
So that has been good. And now what we've also done are things that needed to be done in the prior environment but never got finished, especially after Johnny passed. We needed to have certain equipment upgrades. We needed to do many things differently, trying to produce more of our product on our own rather than having to outsource it. So you could cut down production time, you can cut down delivery times, you can cut down costs. We're producing our hardware now. Thanks to Sam, we're making our tube lugs. Sounds like, what's the big deal? It is a big deal. That lug has a specific contour to the foot.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just like some take it off the shelf and throw a tube lug on. It's a big deal.
These are not drumbuilder.com parts. Nothing wrong with drumbuilder.com.
No, love those guys.
Parts. Yeah.
But this is another level of complexity. So you've got to find somebody who can do that. And we like to do as much of that domestically as we possibly can. So Sam found a way to put the pieces together to get that lug built here. And the most complicated thing of all is once you got the product built, that's great, but you can't get it chrome plated because nobody wants to take small plating jobs.
Yep.
But he worked that out too. So Sam has worked through all of those things. He's figured out how to set up the factory, I'll call it a factory, but the shop, for greater efficiency. Mm-hmm. He's been great training people. The existing team has learned from him. He's learned from them as well. And I think we're well poised to move forward. The COVID thing throws a wrench in everybody's works.
The whole world.
But we feel really confident about the path we're on. There are some other projects we're working on within Craviotto that I can't really talk about right now, but things that I think will also enable us to expand the reach to a broader customer base. So we're excited about it. People still want the product. They still care about the product.
Very much so.
And we're happy that when people have reviewed the product, they've said, well, the question becomes, since Johnny's gone, is it still the same? And the answer is, yeah, it is the same. And almost don't like to say this, but I think we're getting to the point where it's better. Because we're doing things that make it easier for us to produce the product. With newer equipment, the tolerances are better, so there's less waste. So your production is smoother, easier, and it allows you more time to experiment and do different things. So I think we're on the right path. I'm really, really excited about it. And Sam was the guy who we needed to make it happen. Absolutely.
Well, I can tell you right now from personal experience dealing with a few customers that we've had that we're blessed to have at our store who are Craviotto collectors, players, enthusiasts. I know they're all still just as happy as they ever were with their older Craviotto drums as the ones that they've received now. So maybe the way to phrase it is something along the lines of you're absolutely maintaining the quality of the product while improving the customer experience, possibly in terms of turnarounds, costs, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because God, you guys made it was like a gunsmoke metal blue gray lacquer sparkle kit for a guy, one of our customers last year, and I've never seen a drum set that looked like that before.
It's beautiful.
It was unbelievable. The paint was ridiculous. The shells, of course, are absolutely perfect. So it's plied drums are amazing. Solid shells are another animal, and when you find someone who does it as well as Craviotto and you guys do, it's a win-win. Yeah. That's a great thing.
So we're happy about it. I think that, I feel we all feel good about it, and we all feel good about the path we're on. And we go back and we think, Johnny would really be proud of what we've done. We've taken it, we've expanded it, we've gotten the new equipment, things like that to kind of say, we're keeping it going for you, man. We're keeping it going.
That's a beautiful thing. I know everybody's happy to hear that, and we can't wait. I know I can't wait to see the new things that are coming from Craviotto. So
should be fun.
That's beautiful. left turn here, or right turn. So everybody in the crowd can see these drums behind us, right? We're in one of Steve's several amazing collection rooms and showrooms here in the Maxwell Chicago store that they've graciously invited us into to host this podcast today. Okay. It may not even be in here, Steve. Which one is your favorite?
Oh, man, that's a hard
You don't have to say it. It's okay if you can. But which one is the creme de la creme for you that you walk in every morning and go, oh, Lord, I'm so glad those are here?
Boy, there are so many, but I would have to say the one that means the most to me is kit number 2. That was the Craviato kit that Johnny made for me.
Yeah.
I mean, kit number 1 was not mine. It is now, but it wasn't. Kit number 2 was made for me.
It was you.
So, that's a hands down winner. But that's on new stuff.
Yeah.
If you look at vintage stuff, then you have to think back to some things. But I've got, I can name a few things to you that would be ones that would be hard to part with. And when I think about some of this stuff, I try to tell people, I don't try to hoard stuff. I don't like to be a hoarder.
Oh, you can move around in here. You're not a hoarder.
Well, what I like to tell people is a lot of times I look at it this way. I like to be kind of like the caretaker. So something comes into me, beautiful Radio King kit came into me today. Beautiful, white marine pearl, 13, 16, 22, gorgeous. I'll have it for a while. And then I probably won't sell it right away, but then that needs to go on to find another new home of someone who will appreciate it, kind of curate it and respect it and be the next caretaker. You don't just turn around and sell it to whoever comes in just to make a few bucks. That's not what it's about. So some of these things that are favorites of mine, I have a soft spot for, there's a chrome Slingerland kit here with 2 bass drums and 2 floor toms and a bunch of stuff. And that is not the kit that I owned during this early part of my life, but the exact replica of what I owned. It's a Slingerland vintage from that same era that I was lucky enough to find.
Yeah.
And that kit served me on many gigs and during a part of my life that I really enjoyed.
The one you had or these?
The one I had.
Gotcha.
So this reminds me of that.
Don't freak out, everybody. Marshall's going to take some fantastic video of a lot of the stuff in the store. So if you can't see what he's talking about behind my big noggin, you will shortly.
And there was behind that, there's a copper overwood Slingerland kit from, and that era was around 73, 74. Yeah. And that was always a favorite finish of mine. I had a kit in that finish, and I did sell it. And later on, I've accumulated many, many, many of the drums. But it's just a big favorite of mine. I would never sell that kit.
Is the 12 new? I thought I heard somebody saying it was a new drum.
Well, no, meaning a
new to you.
New to me, yeah. There's a 12 over there, and I was dumb enough. I had a nice 12, 14, 20, and I sold it to a good friend of mine. But it's one of those where I wish I hadn't sold that. Because I didn't have a 14. Again, I found a 14, found a 20, but couldn't find a nice 12. So I found one that's kind of okay. But yesterday, a fellow brought in some really, really nice ones, and I've got a nice 12 to match the rest of the kit now. So
wow, that's a smoke show over there.
And I'm very particular about that because that finish was copper. So most of the examples you see have black all over them because the copper pits, because it's just what it is.
Of course.
So I don't have clean ones. But there's a kit in the museum room. It doesn't look like much. It's a 12, 14, 18, and it's a gold color wrap, and it's a pearl kit.
Oh, that's the one that caught my eye.
Well, that's a pearl fiberglass kit.
Yes.
And the snare drum's a 7x14 metal shell drum, and that kit belonged to Art Blakey. And I got to say, that is probably one of the best playing kits I've ever sat behind in my entire life. I will never sell that kit.
Should it be your house? I mean,
it was.
Okay.
For Deb can tell you, it was in the living room for years. And then I finally said, I should bring it up and put it on display out here, which I did.
So maybe tomorrow it's going back to the living room because I'm seeing a glimmer of excitement in Steve's eye.
That thing is great. And then that also takes me to my other favorite, which you will see many examples of, including right behind here, which are Fibes drums. And not a lot of people know much about Fibes, but it was a great design, fiberglass shells. Bob Grosso and John Moraine had developed this in the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
And I did a podcast, Steve Jr. and I did a podcast on this not long ago. But these things are remarkable. And the chrome over fiberglass snare with what they call the SFT strainer, super fine tuning, I think is what it stood for. That was one of Buddy Rich's favorite snare drums. He played that with his Slingerland drums. And I was honored to own 3 of the 4 5 snares that Buddy owned.
Wow.
And there is a reason he played that drum. They are amazingly good. Yeah.
What? Forgive me, I should know this. Fibes and quarter, are those associated?
Well, yeah.
I should know this.
Well, no. It's Fibes is a more obscure brand.
Okay.
But Fibes was owned by the two, started by the two guys. They sold to C.F. Martin.
Okay.
And then the company changed hands. C.F. Martin, they make Martin guitars. What are they in the drum business for? It's like when CBS decided they needed to be in the drum business and bought Rogers, and the guitar business, and they bought Fender, and they goofed them all up. So C.F. Martin got rid of it. It moved down. It was Darwin for a while. It was Quarter, and then it became Fibes again with Tommy Robertson down in Austin. So Tommy kind of got things from, I think he got everything from Quarter, and then he got the Fibes name from whoever still owned the name, and he was producing them down in Austin. At that point, he was doing more of with Jasper wood shells than with fiberglass or acrylic. But to me, the best Fibes stuff is that from the 60s through the middle 70s.
Yeah. This behind us is, what years would these be? 70s type stuff?
This is Nazareth, Pennsylvania, when C.F. Martin owned them.
Okay, yeah.
So this is 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have the molds that these drums could have been made on?
No, because the way the fiberglass, the fiberglass shells are made in a totally different way.
Gotcha.
And they are I would love to reproduce these exact shells today, but you'd have to think about, it would be a hard job. The toxic fumes.
Yeah, right.
You have to think about health issues.
We just let them be things of our dreams in the past, sure.
But I have a huge collection of these.
Amazing.
And they are great. They sound incredible. And you want to, people say, well, why would anybody play that? Do they sound good? Just go and listen to Mahavishnu Orchestra and watch Billy Cobham play the Clear Fibes kit.
Yeah.
That he played with Mahavishnu. I think that'll kind of solve it for you right there.
Well, and this kind of ties into our next question. For the younger drummers, Fibes drums are brand Dailers from Mastodon. He endorses one brand, but he plays Fibes many times in the studio. He has an old Fibes kit, and that's his favorite kit to record on. So you listen to those Mastodon records, a lot of times those are going to be old Fibes drums. Yeah. Hope I didn't get Brand in trouble just now. I'm sure the folks at Tom would know about that. So
I know a lot of guys who endorse Brand X and in the studio bring a Gretsch Round Batch kit.
Well, I'm sure that the guy who's mad at whatever company Brand X right now has a Gretsch Round Batch at his house, and he goes, well, yeah, God, I love my Gretsch too. So we're speaking of the guy from Mastodon. Gene Krupa was who set the fire for you when you were younger. Do you have any younger drummers that has jumped off the page with you recently?
It's an interesting thing. Justin Faulkner, he's a great player, really, really fine player. And there are so many good, just really good players out there these days. But I like the guys who have a kind of a nod to the past and the history of what I call the old masters. And it's really interesting thing, but there's some really fine players out there.
You'd really dig Miley from Rival Sons. His feel's crazy. His drums sound just like all the old drums, and that band's a great rock and roll band. So I think you would dig that guy's sound a whole lot. Yeah. If you hadn't heard that guy yet.
No, I haven't, and that's one of the things I haven't had much of an opportunity to do is to really listen to a lot of newer guys, but I know they're out there, man. So, as a guy, jazz player, and he's not a well-known name, but he's out in New York. He's a Craviotto player, Carmen and Torre, and Carmen's great, man. He plays he's a killing jazz player, and he's got great technique, great style, great sound. He's just a good guy. There's a lot of really Ulysses Owens. God, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marcus Gilmore. Oh my God!
Amazing,
oh my God!
Amazing.
Well, Brian Blade's not young.
Well, but I mean,
Brian's. I don't mean it that young. I don't mean Brian's not like 25.
When I say a new drummer, I mean somebody who isn't one of our heroes. In the normal Louis Bellson, Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa. Yeah. Box. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because everybody knows who Neil Peart is or was, and then those types of things. So maybe names that.
But yeah, I mean, guys like all those guys I just mentioned, those guys are incredible. And even some guys that were lesser known names from the era that I grew up in were phenomenal players. I mean, I grew up, Buddy was my hero, Louis Bellson, Papa Joe Jones from the Basie Band, and on and on. But, Harold Jones with the Basie Band was incredible.
Yeah.
He was with them from 68 to 72, I think it was. Wonderful guy. As a matter of fact, I've got his kit right over there. That little Silver Sparkle Downbeat kit.
Yeah.
That kit has history to it. That kit is the kit that he played when he was with the Paul Winter Sextet, and it was the first integrated band that played in the White House in 1963.
Amazing.
And that's the kit he played.
Is that the picture on the floor, Tom?
Yep. That's the picture of them.
And the drums are in the picture?
The drums are in the picture.
Well, it doesn't get cooler than that, does it?
So Harold is still alive and playing great. As a matter of fact, before the COVID stuff, he was touring with Tony Bennett, doing 3-hour shows with Tony.
Wow.
And a collector friend of mine bought that kit, and we're going to donate it on Harold's behalf to the American Black History Museum. Because that's where it belongs.
Yeah.
It should be there.
How cool. And the fact that you've got the photograph to go along with it, good Lord, that's about as cool as it gets for sure.
That's great history. But Harold was a great player. Joe Cusatis, who was one of my teachers in New York at one time, was a phenomenally good player, technique-wise, but also style and taste.
Yeah.
He did years and years with Peter Nero. Great guy. Buddy Rich said the greatest big band drummer he ever knew was Don Lamont. And a lot of people go, "What's Don Lamont?" They don't know, but that's okay. This is a long time ago. We're talking in the 50s.
Well, what we're doing here is
60s.
we're getting names recorded on a podcast so folks can go, okay, Don Lamont,
Yeah.
okay, who's going to be?
Yeah. There's stuff that people should really, really check it out.
Important, it's important. We've got a great I say younger, he's probably my age or older, but we've got a guy named Daru Jones who's going to be on next week's episode of the podcast. So we're shooting. Fantastic human being. He's extremely positive, amazing player, and I'm sure most of who's going to watch this knows who he is, but if you don't, you should check out Daru. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff out there.
And the more you think about it, the longer you go. Oh, Cindy Blackman. I know Cindy real well. Cindy is amazing. She's channeling Tony. She's channeling Art Blakey, and she's got her own angle going to it. She's incredible. Phenomenal.
Cindy is absolutely in my top 5.
Oh, yeah.
No question.
She's killing it.
She is a fire drummer.
Yeah.
I've never had the opportunity to meet her. We've got her PASIC kit at the store down in Nashville. We've got the gold glass glitter Gretsch kit that she played last year's PASIC. So any Cindy Blackman fan, you can have her drums.
Yes. No, she's great. She's a sweetheart, and she just kills it.
That's awesome. She's in the Santana band, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because I know Dennis did that for a while, and I thought she was in that band. So earlier we talked a little bit about, there's sort of been an underlying theme this entire conversation about COVID and things like that in drum retail. I hate to put you on the spot, but where does Maxwell Chicago go from here? With all, you guys are killing it. The studio in there is unbelievable. I'm sure Steven does an incredible job in there, and we've seen some of the videos that you guys produce here, and they're amazing, and they sound great, and everything in here looks ridiculous. But for you guys here in Chicago, is that the next push? Is just going to be continuing to sort of expand your online business, because you guys are open on Saturdays, 11 to 5. Where does that go from here? Do you guys continue to focus on that? Have you guys had any brain busters blow up in your head about, we could maybe, we're going to do online from here to here, and we're going to be open to public here, but maybe we do this. Is there an exciting new thing? It's okay to say no.
Yeah, we're looking at a bunch of things. Like we have a drumstick line that we started to produce.
Yes, I've heard of that.
Yes, and I was getting ready to do that, and they're specifically drumsticks that are designed off of vintage sticks that were available through the 50s into the 60s. And they're very, very nice, different models that haven't been produced for decades. But they're very cool. We want to go through and get that line moving again. Again, COVID slowed everything down, so
sure.
We'll ramp it up. But that's one of the things we want to do. We do our vintage reproduction parts. There are some parts of that we do.
Yeah.
We do some other things that we just created and just put out a 2-way key. It's a hex key and a drum key.
I saw those. Those look very well machined.
Yeah, and they're machined, and they're made right here in the U.S.
Amazing. Which now Craviotto, Craviotto was, but you guys are even tightening the USA made thing, which is awesome with that.
Right, by making all the hardware here too. So those things are important. And here, I think we continue to do more of what we've been doing, and I also want to be doing more content in videos, not necessarily just a performance video, but just a content video talking about different things. For example, I do a column now for Modern Drummer magazine called From the Past. So it's a monthly column, and it's basically talking about, I pick a drummer from the past that the younger players may never even have heard of. And we talk a little bit about that and say, here's who this person was and what they were like. And here's some places you can go to get a sense for what they did and how they played.
Yeah.
So we're doing that, and I think I'll do more of that. I've also gotten some requests to do more, some instructional things, which we'll try to do as well. It's just timing to try to fit it all in is a tricky bit.
Of course, but man, that's so neat and so cool, because I mean, like when we were all growing up, I mean, we had as simple as the paper catalogs you would get from a drum manufacturer. You would go home and you would eat your breakfast cereal before school, and you would read it and be like, I can't wait you'd start writing a list down of what you're going to get, sizes and everything. And I feel like it's so crucial and important to have folks like you and Debbie and Steven and Chris and everyone around to not only continue the legacy of the shops like you've done in terms of the New Yorks and the Chicagos and now the Nashvilles with us, but also to bring, because these drummers that are growing up now and getting going aren't going to have maybe the romanticized, I don't even know what the word, a romanticized environment with like getting those paper catalogs and obsessing over the colors of the drums and things like that. So because so much of what you guys do here is not only very cool and vintage and obviously everybody's to sell drums and make money retail. That's how it works. Sure. But you guys are very, very in depth all the time. You put out videos like you were saying about drummers that kids may not know about, or you guys are working on sticks that are vintage models that no one's ever seen before because they've been out of production for X amount of years. So keeping those legacies going, I don't think there could be anything cooler that you guys are doing. I mean, you guys are really trying to keep and doing a good job with it to keep Craviotto, for instance, all these drum legacies, trying to not let them go by the wayside, because I think a lot of people, maybe in the drum industry, retail industry, are so obsessed with the next forward move. They're covering those well, but they're also not respecting the past as much. So I think it's great that you guys are doing that, and I think you're doing a good job with it.
Well, I appreciate that, man. We try every day.
It's
and
awesome.
We have fun while we're doing it. You have to have fun at the same time.
I don't think I've ever seen you not smiling. I mean, I haven't seen you in 6 months, so maybe you were frowning somewhere in there.
Oh, maybe once or twice.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to get the behind the scenes from Debbie, and we'll see what that was all about.
Maybe once or twice, yeah.
Well, I think it's great, man. Do you want to, if the floor is going to be yours as we get out here, do you have anything you want to say to our friends, or do you have anything you want to be like, man, you need to check this drum out. It's not for sale, but good Lord, it's cool. Check the video out. Do you have anything like that you want to dump in here before Marshall does his grand video sweep of the whole place?
The only thing I would say would have nothing to do with me and us. I would say people out there who are musicians, take the time and visit the local shop, man. Shop, with the guys who are out there. We are not the only people doing what we're doing. There's a lot of people doing the independent drum model. Jose up at Revival, Stan and Jerry at Pro Drum. I mean, there's guys all over the place that we love and respect that are trying to do this and keep this model going and fight back against the 800-pound gorillas in the industry. And there's nothing wrong with those larger operations, but it's a different animal. You can't. This shop and the shops like ours, we're there to sell products, yes, but we're there to provide service, repairs, and the like. And more importantly, the shop is a place for us. It's a sense of a place of community where you can interact with other performers and players, and that's important. So you can't get that online when you dial up and buy something. You don't get that.
Sure.
And so, those independent shops, they need the support of everybody in those neighborhoods. And I would just say, if you're going to go buy your drum stuff, if you can, go buy it from the local guy. It doesn't have to be me. Any of the local guys. Wherever you live, find the local shop and help them out.
And be their buddies. I mean, back at our store when I was a kid growing up, you would have the opportunity to meet some of the best studio drummers in Nashville right at Gary's store for all those years, because they were just friends with each other. And a lot of times they would be there on their lunch break sitting around on the thrones right in the front, and they were just waiting for the traffic to pass.
That's right.
And, like a total nerd kid like me at 13 years old walks in there with my cool bowl cut in 1996, and I see like, oh my gosh, there's Tommy Wells, there's Jerry Croon, there's Ron Ganaway. Like, these are all the drummers I read about in the magazine, and they're all right here. So that's an experience. I totally agree with you. You can't get at a bigger box maybe store, because maybe those guys don't have the time to go to one of those places or something, and there's less and less real drum stores around. I mean,
for me, it was, if I was in New York at Ippolito's, I'd go there and I'd have my session with Papa Joe, and maybe you'd go downstairs and Mel Lewis would be there, or Elvin would be there. And the same thing came full circle in New York a couple of times, and it made me smile because I was upstairs and we had 2 floors, and we were up on the second floor. It was a little bit more elaborate. And I was up there, and Vinny Colaiuta and I were up there. We had been sitting around talking and playing Craviotto kits back and forth. And customers came up, and the customers just looked over it, and then they did a double take. I said, yeah, that's Vinny sitting right there. Another time it came up, Chris McHugh was there, Ronnie Vannucci from The Killers. Another time it came in, Matt Chamberlain's there, Jeff Hamilton's there, and we're just sitting around talking. People are like, this is why I go to the local drum shop. That's what it was like when I was a kid. You go in New York, who's going to walk in? Elvin, Mel Lewis, any of those guys. You never, Art Blakey.
You don't know. It's that mystery and that intrigue is sort of part of the intangible magic of what makes independent drum shops across the country so vital and so cool.
Yeah.
Because it's really almost like winning a scratch off or something like that. You walk in and you see your hero drummers literally just sitting there drinking a coffee and waiting for the traffic to pass so he can get to his next session or just get home. Amazing. And so it's very important, and it's very cool that you guys are have an amazing shop that continues that legacy that we're also happy to be part of.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you. I want to say thank you to all you guys for hanging out with us tonight, of course. Thank you, Steve Maxwell, for being here.
Pleasure.
Maxwell,
thank you guys.
Chicago. Thank you, Marshall, for handling the video stuff.
Yes.
You'll see some killer photographs of some of the amazing, and I mean amazing, vintage drums and newer drums that are all here in Steve and Debbie and Steven's and Chris's drum store. So thank you guys so much for having us. Check us out. Be safe out there.
Yes.
Social distance. You'll see Steve and I have both been in isolation for 6 months from each other, so I think we're okay here. We're playing it safe, but you guys stay safe. Check us out at forkstrumcloset.com again, and have a great weekend, everybody.